Jonathan, who's a very well-established and senior journalist, was asked by an elite school, actually founded by a refugee from Nazi Germany. They invited him to talk to pupils. This is UWC Atlantic. It's a very prestigious school. A friend of mine, a daughter of a friend of mine, actually went to it. Jonathan was invited and then cancelled. Jonathan, talk us through this. What happened?
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe it's a rite of passage as a journalist these days to be cancelled for something, but I didn't expect a school set up by a German refugee from Nazi Germany to be the one to cancel me, a Jew, the son of a Holocaust survivor, due to go there and speak about anti-Semitism to the children. So that was the shock. And it was also a shock because after I'd been invited, I had several long conversations, meetings on Zoom with the school facilitators about the requirements for the children there, and that some of them were emotionally connected to the topics I was talking about, and so they wanted to make sure that I could be sensitive and accommodating of their needs. And I made clear all the way through that absolutely I would be. You know, I've spoken in schools before. I'm used to speaking to young people. I'm used to speaking to adults. It's part of the nature of the work that I do. So I was shocked when eventually they came back and said that after they had publicised that I was going to be there, they had some problems with some of the students who they felt would have an emotional reaction, that would feel endangered, that my presence would be somehow threatening to them.
Endangered, threatening. I mean, these are just ludicrous terms. You are someone who speaks very passionately, but very logically and very straightforwardly. I mean, this is just nonsense.
Well, I think it's nonsense, and I think it's worse than nonsense. I think that to make these sorts of concessions in the face of people who maybe demanded that I shouldn't be there because they disagree with me is to give in, and it's to go against all the true ideals of that school or any school, or at least the ideals as they should be.
I mean, surely when you're in sixth form, the idea is that you expand your mind, you concentrate on a smaller number of subjects, you have critical thinking, you start to have disagreements and arguments with your teachers and so on. I'm not saying that I don't want anybody to be emotionally distressed, but I don't think you would have done that anyway, and as you say, you would have been sensitive to this. But simply because there were objections from the students, I mean, surely a true leader of a school would say, I note your objections, but actually you can either not attend this, or you can attend and then put up your hand at the end and ask a challenging question.
Absolutely. And the fact is that this was an extracurricular activity that I think some students had requested because they felt that after 17 months or so of activities relating to the war in Israel and Gaza, they felt that their perspective had been underrepresented, some of them Jewish or Israeli, because it's a school made up of an international student body. Some of them are royalty from Spain and some of them are refugees from the Middle East. So there's a wide mix, a broad mix of people there, and the whole aim of that school, as I understand it, their ethos, is to try and create world citizens who can listen to one another and who can strive for a world of coexistence and peace. But if you hide the mainstream perspective that I was there to represent of some of those people, if you try and silence the voice of Jews or people who are talking about anti-Semitism since October the 7th, it's at a world peak in my lifetime. If you silence those people, or you tell them they can't be there, or they can only be there in a pre-recorded video, they can't see the room.
That was the option they gave you, wasn't it? A pre-recorded video, which they could presumably vet and see what you had to say and say, actually, is this going to upset people?
Yeah, well, quite. And I mean, that doesn't encourage or foster discussion or understanding of anything. And I would say that given that they emphasised to me how important it was that I should adapt how I spoke or what I said to the people in the room and their reaction, to then remove my ability to do that by insisting that I could only submit a pre-recorded video was ridiculous. I had committed to spending 8 hours travelling from London to South Wales in that one day in order to be there and to speak with the children. And I often will go and speak to schools or universities or just about anywhere that has a genuine interest in hearing what I have to say and what I represent, because I think that's a fundamental part of education and persuasion and analytical, critical thinking that is perhaps lacking in some places these days. So given that that was the case, to tell me that I could only do a pre-vetted speech by video was absurd, especially as if they want to watch videos of me, I have a
there are plenty of those,
thriving YouTube channel they
can go on the app here and see what you have to say there. A spokesperson, I'll say spokesman because I hate the phrase spokesman for UWC Atlantic, this is the school, said at UWC Atlantic the safety and well-being of our students remain our highest priority. As an international college with children aged 16 to 18 from diverse backgrounds, including those who have direct experience of conflict and trauma, we have a deep responsibility to ensure all discussions are conducted with sensitivity. The college regularly hosts events and workshops with internal and external speakers to provide a wide range of perspectives on world affairs. These are designed to foster constructive dialogue, utilising mutual respect, critical thinking and peace building. We explored alternative formats to ensure that discussions could take place while upholding our safeguarding responsibilities. Unfortunately, Mr. Sacerdoti declined these options and we were unable to find a mutually agreeable way forward. UWC Atlantic remains committed to fostering open and meaningful discussions that enhance our students' understanding of important world issues. What do you make of that, Jonathan?
Well, there was one option, I did say, I'm perfectly clear about that. It was to send a pre-recorded video with pre-recorded answers to pre-vetted questions. I did decline that, they're right. This is a handy way of saying they didn't cancel me, but they did cancel what was originally suggested, which is that I would be there and engage in an open and sensitive discussion with the children, which I was fully committed to doing. I think I demonstrated that in the hours of conversations that I had with them beforehand, listening to all the concerns and committing myself explicitly to doing that. So I think it's doubly dishonest to say that they offered me options that I refused. There was one option only, and I think that most people listening to this will know that that doesn't sound like a very reasonable option to try and
what do you draw from this, Jonathan? What's the impression that is left, apart from the fact that you've been treated very rudely, I think, by this school? But given the nature of what you were likely to say, I think there are conclusions that people will automatically draw from that.
I don't really feel too bad personally about it. It's not I'm not asking for sympathy. I feel much worse for the children who had requested that somebody like me or that I should be there in order to try to counter what they perhaps had sensed was a message that had been relentingly one-sided for the last 17 months. I feel sorry for those children. I feel sorry for all of the children there who don't get to broaden their perspectives by hearing opinions and thoughts and analysis that they might not agree with instinctively. They might not agree with even once they've heard it. So I feel more sorry for the children. I would say that the adults responsible for them have failed them in that respect, out of perhaps, if we read them at face value, an over-cautious sense of looking after their emotional well-being. If that was the intention, I think that has got in the way of their broader education and their broader exposure to critical thinking and different ideas and different positions, which is all I was there to represent. Yeah. We discussed at length that that's what I would do. So I think that is a failing of that school, and I'm afraid so. I think it's probably happening up and down the country and other schools and universities as well. That's why I'm speaking out about it, not out of any sense of wanting revenge or to make anybody feel bad, but because I think it's really important that when these things do happen, we should call them out and speak out. And as a Jewish person, it's happening over and over again to people in my community, to other Jewish people. So I'm very pleased to have a platform to express my disappointment and disgust with being cancelled in that regard, on behalf of all the Jewish people who are afraid to do so.
Well, this is one platform from which you will never be cancelled. Jonathan, thank you. Jonathan Sacerdoti there, journalist and broadcaster.